Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby, where we help women be empowered, intentional mothers. This podcast is best enjoyed sipping tea or taking a stroll in nature. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be substituted for professional psychological or medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, midwife, or other qualified health provider with any questions about your personal situation, health, or medical condition. Welcome back to My Body, My Bump, My Baby. Today, Hannah and I are going to talk to you about something that I find so sweet, a celebration of the woman for the pregnant woman called a Blessingway. So this is going to be really fun. I've actually given lots of Blessingways over the years, and Hannah has not experienced a Blessingway yet. And so we're going to kind of describe what it is and go through who it's for and why you might want to have a Blessingway as Hannah learns about them as well.
Yeah, I think that oftentimes, when we're talking about this, I don't want to equate it to a baby shower, but what we automatically go to in the United States as a culture is you're having a baby. First baby shower. And the baby shower is a celebration of the baby.
For the most part, I feel like it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the gifts that come are gifts for the baby. You're caring for the baby, or baby clothes, baby blankets, baby, right?
Yeah.
Right? The Blessingway is more about the celebration of either a maiden becoming a mother, so this transition, like a rite of passage, a major transition in your life, or a first-time mom becoming a mom of two, or a mom of two becoming a mom of three. And every time you have another baby, even though you might have had one before, you change a little bit. And so it's a celebration of that woman's rite of passage in that change of motherhood, that state of motherhood.
I like that. I think it's more interesting than a birthday to some extent. I mean, I always say I think birthdays maybe should be for the birthing mother. To my mom, I'm like, thank you for birthing me on my birthday.
She's like, now that I've given birth, I think that day is my day, not
yeah, screw Mother's Day. Just
kidding. And if you think about it too, it's like, kind of the woman is really giving a lot of herself to grow and nurture this baby while pregnant. And then we do a baby shower, which celebrates the baby, which is good and it's helpful. But I think it misses a point, which is her. Like,
I got a question from one of my friends the other day. It's like, what's something that you want for your postpartum or like leading up to it that's going to make you more comfy and cozy, and like, what is it that you want? And I'm like, thank you for asking that question.
What did you answer?
A robe thingy, like a gown thingy thing, it's just the dressing gown type thing to sleep in.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the nice things about Blessingways as well is, you and I were talking about this a couple of minutes ago, sometimes first time baby, it's really nice to have a baby shower because you need a lot of items. You've never done this before, so you don't have all of these items, and it can be expensive, right?
Yeah. And I will say, though, after that first baby, you look back and you're like, I didn't need
half that stuff,
half or 3/4 of these things.
Well, we're a very stuff-oriented culture, and so it's like,
first, we're stuff-oriented, and I think baby showers enable that versus someone giving a deed or a service,
right?
Which in other countries is way more of the norm. Like when the postpartum mother is like fawned on in the first 40 days in like China and India.
Yes.
And I think that creates a little bit of discomfort in our society.
We have this culture of you can't be weak. We all need to be strong and self-sufficient. And I feel like for some people, it feels like weakness to be cared for as an adult.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that that's the right thing to do at all. I think that we could learn from these other cultures.
100%.
How to ask.
Well, you know what we have to do? I think it's in our plan. We have to do a postpartum episode and talk about that. But before we get really deep into Blessingway, we thought we would give a little bit of a background of its origin. So I learned about Blessingways through a couple of different books. And one of them that I really like, hold on just a second, I'm going to grab it. One of them that I really like is called Blessingways, A Guide to Mother-Centered Baby Showers. And it's by Sherry Master. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. It's a fantastic book. When she describes the origin of Blessingways, she describes it as originating from the Navajo sacred fertility rite, and they called it Blessingway. So that's where we're borrowing the word from. But there are a bunch of other ways to call Blessingway. You can call it a mother's blessing. I'm very familiar with mother's blessing. She also mentioned belly blessing. Then I think there was another one, but I don't remember what it was. So we kind of started off with a little bit talking about baby showers, and we're more familiar as a culture with baby showers. And so, comparing a Blessingway and a baby shower so that you can kind of get a little bit of an idea of the difference. Like baby showers, like we said, very baby-centered. Blessingway, though, is really just focused on the woman. I mean, we're excited about the baby, but the celebration is for her.
Is the celebration around the woman in general, or is it around the preparation for birth?
It's actually around the rite of passage.
Okay.
This is really special and unique. Think about this. Way back when, and also maybe today in other cultures that are not as industrialized as ours, men and women both had some type of ceremonial rite of passage. So this is a time that marks the transition typically between youth and adulthood. For the male, it would be boy to hunter, or boy to warrior, or boy to man, right? And for the girl, it would be girl to mother, girl to nurturer, girl to caretaker.
Even girl to woman, I think, like girl the celebration of the first like bleed or menstruation, as we call it, like in our medicalized society. But I think that has been big in a lot of cultures too, of celebrating you are now able to bear children.
For women, we're really lucky because in our very tame culture here in the United States, for men, maybe it was something like fierce that was a show of strength, or a show of what do you want to courage. I was like, lack of fear,
and bravery.
Courage, bravery. So usually for them, it would be something physically kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. And for our poor boys, we don't really have that anymore. It's not acceptable behavior to do things like that anymore, for the most part, unless it's like organized sport.
In the U.S. culture.
In the U.S. culture
in
today.
a typical, mainstream culture.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, like a tribal culture, I was recently watching something on a show about these tribal cultures making their rite of passage, and the young boys would have these very, very long, hard reed sticks, so they're bendable, so they can almost like a whip kind of sensation, and they were very tall, taller than themselves, and they would go into a battle against another opposing transitioning male, and it really set the tone for. Are you
a really intense.
Right. So now you're understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it would set the tone for now if the male who wins the battle is the succeeding male, and then all the girls want to have him as the husband, right? This is part of their mating ritual. I don't know what happens for the poor guy who doesn't win, but so those type of things are still practiced for men in other cultures, tribal cultures. But in the United States, we don't have anything like that.
And we also don't really talk about women, girls getting their period and celebrating that.
I wish we did.
Yeah,
we really
I
should.
think it should. Yeah, it should be. It's less of a. It's more of a, this happens to keep it under the rug, don't talk about it, versus making it a celebration.
So for us, society, politically correct behavior.
That's the word. Yeah.
Those type of things really cannot, so far, maybe it can, but so far has not been able to take away those rite of passages, because the rite of passages happen to our body, within our body, and they happen no matter what society is saying. And so, there are several, right? We have, made into woman, your first bleed, your first menses, and then woman to mother, you're bearing children. And then eventually you have another very delineating line in your life, mother to crone or woman to crone, where you go to menopause. Those are there. And each one is a rite of passage that we have in our body, but do we celebrate them?
No, we medicalize them and we make them seem more of a burden than a virtue.
Right. So the Blessingway is a form of celebration. It is, let me just describe it, I think. That might be a nice way to explain what it is. So it is typically a feminine gathering. And there's a reason for that. The idea is that it should be a feminine energy field around this woman as we celebrate this rite of passage of motherhood for her. And it should be the closest people in her life. So that could be best friend, mother, sister, auntie, grandma, whoever she has close by that can be there and participate, but that she can be raw and open with. I'm almost thinking, now this is not a rule, but I would say you kind of want it to be people that you would not mind having in your home after the baby has arrived to change your sweaty sheets or your milk-stained sheets or your bloody underwear. Those are the people that we're inviting to a Blessingway, because it's very raw and sacred, and you need to be able to feel unmasked.
Mm-hmm.
So
a little different than a baby shower.
100%. Right in the...
You're awkwardly opening presents.
Right at the beginning of the thing, it's somebody who's going to clean my dirty, bloody underwear, that is not the same people that I am inviting to my baby shower. This is a suggestion, by the way. Anybody can do it however they want. But this is, in my opinion, the essence of where this thing is supposed to go. So these women gather on the Blessingway day, and the event is very sacred and includes lots of ritual. It should not include any store-bought gifts. The idea is that really does diminish the intentions and the energy that we're supposed to bring. We gather together in a circle, which this is kind of nice if you can have family there, because it also celebrates the lineage, right? The lineage of the family of that woman. So you gather in a circle. There's usually a cleansing ritual at the beginning. This is if you ever gone to church, it's kind of like, if you've ever gone to Catholic Church is really heavy in ritual. So it's a good example. If you've ever gone to a Catholic church, at the very beginning of the, do they call it ceremony? Mass. The very beginning of the Mass, the priest and the altar boys or altar girls walk down the aisle, and there's usually incense in a little brass or copper container. So the scent of the incense is the beginning. It is called Mass, but it's a ritual. So it's the beginning of the ritual, and it's supposed to set the tone and the energy of not only the space, but of the people. The idea, let me just go on. In the Mass, usually, at some point in the Mass, there is the breaking of the bread and communion. So as they do that, there's the little ceremony that he does around the host, and they do the little bells, ding a ding a ding a ding a ding, and then the wine and ding a ding a ding a ding. So that is all the ritual that is supposed to create that like feeling connection. Of like something special is happening here, right? This is not your everyday. This is not us walking through the grocery store. This is a special moment right now, right? And so it's the same thing at the beginning of a Blessingway. At the beginning of a Blessingway, there is some type of cleanse or ceremony of cleansing. And the circle is brought together, so all the women stand in the circle. And then there's like a close of the circle, so it's almost like a containment. So that would be like the church, right? So we're containing this sacred energy in this space. It usually has singing, so maybe sometimes poetry. I love it when sisters who are musical bring their instruments and they're actually doing the music, or sometimes family members will make a special poem just for that event and that day so they can recite that. There might be some type of like meditation or singing bowls or something like that to kind of also bring in that very meditative, sacred energy. And then there's some rituals. So there's a whole bunch. That book that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast has all kinds of different ideas on rituals. But I'll throw out a few that I like. So typically in my circles, every woman has a candle in front of her. And we open up the circle by one at a time lighting the candle. And as we light the candle, we state the lineage of mothers in your line. So for example, for me, I would say, I'm Bea, daughter of Deborah, daughter of Florana, daughter of Carolina. So that's my mom, my grandma, my great-grandma. So, and in that line. And I light my candle, and then with my candle, I help the person next to me light their candle, and they will state the lineage of their line, which is just giving them honor. But also it's asking those who are no longer with us to be present with us in that moment as well, which is very sweet. So there is the naming ceremony. There's so many things you can do from there. One of the reasons I like the candles is I like the ladies who come to take the candles home with them. And the idea is that someone who is close to the birthing woman, would notify one person in the circle to let them know that she's in labor. And the agreement amongst the women is that when she goes into labor, all of the candles are lit, and they are sending their positive energy and their good wishes to her. And she knows this. So I won't get through this without being emotional.
We did this for one of my friends that just had her baby. We didn't do the ceremony ahead of time, but when she went into labor, we did that.
All lit the candles.
Yeah.
So
I do think. So I was reading something about how at Latino stores, like Hispanic, if you go to like a Hispanic marketplace, you can purchase 7-day candles that will burn a really long time versus out in like an hour.
So I usually will get those. They're actually tall, just like your
the big ones.
Yes,
yeah.
And I usually get
about
them white,
10 inches, 12 inches.
Yes, so that they can be burned for a very long time. You don't want them
I like
to
that
run
idea.
out.
Yeah.
So the idea is, in every labor, for every woman, there is a place where she's going to get into the gate of great doubt, where she will doubt her ability to birth the baby on her own.
And we talked about this gate in more depth in
Unmedicated birth Part 2. I don't think anybody gets out of that gate, by the way. It's not just for unmedicated. It's going to happen for all moms. Everybody will go through,
it.
That gate of doubt at some point. So when the idea is when she gets to that place, she should remember her circle of women, and she can close her eyes and visualize wherever they are in the world, all of those candles lit and flickering for her. For me, when I'm hosting the ceremony, at some point I have every woman in the circle give her a blessing. And the idea is that when she needs it most, she's going to remember these blessings. So a blessing might be something like, there's a nourishing moment. My blessing is usually the mama bird. So there's a nourishing
moment.
One of
the early nourishing moments that we
called
have.
the mama bird. And so for me, I will usually bring a little bead that is a bird.
Aww.
And eventually everybody brings one bead, and they attach their blessing to the bead.
Cool.
And the bead is strung up to turn into a bracelet or a necklace. It's a birthing bracelet or a birthing necklace.
That's so cool.
So then when she's in that place, ideally she's wearing her Blessingway birthing necklace or bracelets. When she's in that place and she feels the wings of the bird, I want her to remember the strength of the mama bird.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's just a bunch of these little, really beautiful, precious things sprinkled throughout this ceremony. One other one that I really like to include is the cord ceremony. So we bring like a red piece of yarn, more than a piece, a long piece of red yarn. And before the ceremony ends, we start at the pregnant woman. We tie on the red yarn, and it goes all the way around the circle, and it's all one piece, but every woman will be tied together. And each woman ties it on, and at the end, when we are finished, the cord is cut. This is so symbolic, right? Mm-hmm. This is symbolic of the connection between mom and baby, but also the labor and the birth, and then baby's born, cord is cut. So that is symbolic in the circle, but also everybody makes a agreement to wear the cord until after the baby is born and is safe and doing good. So everybody holds on to it. It's an energetic link of the women for her. So it's kind of this combination of these beautiful little rituals, but also beautiful bits of pampering. So for when I host, I always hand weave a flower crown for her. So when she comes in, it's placed on her head, and she's the only one that has one. So she's a little bit special. And at some point in the ceremony, we usually do some pampering. So maybe she gets like a foot rub or a hand rub. Or one of my favorites is henna. So typically at the end of the ceremony, we have like a little bit of like a potluck. So hopefully everybody brought a little bit of something to share, and we all eat and drink and chit chat. And sometimes it's nice to have like little craft stations for other like crafty gifts that you can give to her. But while we're doing that, while we're sitting, I love to just henna her belly with something special. With that said, then that means Blessingways are usually done close to the birth, like 36, 37, 38 weeks. Because that's kind of the same as a baby shower is usually 36, like 37 weeks.
32.
32?
That's
what
so
I've seen
early. I've seen it earlier. Yeah, like more so in like 30s, 32s. I think mine was probably around then. Yeah, around then. My cousin just had one around then.
So if you're going to have a baby shower at 32 weeks, you can definitely have your Blessingway at 36 and 37. Just have both.
Yeah. In Colorado, babies come early a lot. So
yeah. It's more of an energetic gift giving, an energetic celebration, less commercialized, less material focused. So like some of the stations that we've done or I've done in the past, usually sometimes the mom will have special requests, and if she doesn't, then we'll put something together. But in the past, we've done like little flags, like a little station that just has blank flags with a bunch of cute little markers. And while everybody eats and drinks and chit-chats, people just kind of bounce around the stations. And so for like the flags, you would put something on it that would help her in labor. Then they would be all strung up together on a line. And so she can like hang it in her laboring space so that she can be reminded. So maybe one would just say, breathe. Maybe one could say, you're so strong, right? Just little things like that.
I can definitely see how, and we've talked about this a little bit too, but how you want to make sure that like this space is more, I don't want to say closed off, but it's smaller, it's more sacred than a baby shower. So you want to have people there that you are comfortable getting very raw with.
Usually, you also want it to be people that know you. So one of the things, the idea, here's the idea. If I was to sum it up, the Blessingway, one is it's marking a rite of passage, but two, the idea is fill her cup. So we want her cup to be 100% full of love and goodness before she goes into labor, so that when she goes into labor, which is hard, then she takes little sips of this cup to help her to get through. So one of the things people will often do during a Blessingway is tell that person, the person that the Blessingway is for, tell that person what they see in her. Be her mirror. So they reflect back, like, when I see you, I see whatever, like I see a strong, powerful woman. I see nurturing, love, and good-hearted. So if you can imagine just people showering you with the beautiful reflections of yourself, they're typically very emotional. Like everybody is crying in the circle, but not in a bad way, because it's just so much heart and love and energetic nourishment. And I feel like everybody needs that, right? Let me say this also. Blessingway just doesn't have to just be for a pregnant person. I mean, you can have a woman's circle who does something just similar where you nourish each other.
And I mean, if you look back at like the Navajo traditions too, it's a ceremonial, like a ritual that's not only for the birthing mother.
Right. Everybody. So the feedback I've received from people who have attended as guests, so they're not the mother, but just the guests, they usually are leaving feeling like they're just floating on this cloud, like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. I feel so good. We should do things like this all the time. So yeah, it's good for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a beautiful rite of passage. I think it's a rare thing that we don't get enough in our world today.
Right.
Our day-to-day life.
Right. So I will say this. I highly recommend Blessingway for everybody. If you're lucky enough to know somebody who can do a Blessingway, hit them up as a host. But if you don't know somebody who has experience hosting Blessingways, grab a book. I mean, this is how I learned initially, and then I've done so many now. Over time, hosts can become really good at creating this beautiful sacred space and holding space. What I will say is you do need one host.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sometimes I think baby showers, you can have multiple people doing multiple things. In this case, I would say don't have more than 2 hosts, ideally one host, or if you have 2 hosts, I've done this a lot with my partner, Sarah, but she and I, we're so good together, we don't need verbal communication, like we can just kind of like swim. That works. But the idea is that the hosts really are creating the energy, holding that sacred space for everybody, especially if you think about it. Many women have never experienced anything like this before. And I will say that sometimes at the very beginning, there's a little bit of awkwardness because people don't actually know how to handle themselves in this kind of space. We just don't participate in this kind of space anymore. At least here in the United States, most people don't. So there's this little weird, awkward, wonky, like, I don't know, eyes kind of darting back and forth, like, what do we do? Until the host kind of like grabs the energy and just like pulls it all down. And then all of the people are like, oh, I see where we're going. And they settle in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned women's circles too. There are, opportunities out there for women's circles. I actually have a women's circle that I attend monthly in Colorado Springs. But it's one of those things that's sacred, and finding that group of women can make it a really amazing experience. Like you said, you leave and you're on cloud 9 every single time. I love that.
Everybody is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just feeling so nourished.
Yeah. Well, if you have the opportunity to think about hosting or having a Blessingway for yourself and asking a friend to host it, highly recommend this book. We will link it in the show notes as well. Bea mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast. But just consider this maybe in addition to a baby shower.
I like in addition.
Yeah. And then, or like as you have subsequent children, maybe Blessingways become your way into birth and passage into